because really going out there and interviewing people, you learn so much from what people go through and their advice and their experience. And I'm grateful for every interview I get to do, because every single time I feel different and I feel more enlightened, because it's not even like they have sometimes their advice is things I've heard of, but like the way they say it and the way they picture it or the way they analyze it, I'm like, I didn't I've heard this advice, but the way you're putting it is so interesting. For me, I am changed almost a little bit every single time I have an interview.
No, I actually feel the same way. And it seems like you and I mean, maybe not at exactly the same time, but we both started back in about
Mhm.
2020ish. And I've done now, I mean, this will be episode 104. I've done, yeah, about, well over 100 uh, interviews. And I've changed in that process too. I mean, my understanding and listening to people and um, engaging with them, where they're coming from. And there's always unique conversational elements. Like my conversation with you is going to be different from the one I had last week with another guy, because you're coming from a different place, you get different ideas. There's a different dynamic that just happens based on what we're both interested in and how one idea connects to another.
Uh,
So I definitely resonate with that idea of having changed myself across this journey. Definitely got more comfortable talking on the microphone. I no longer get the what do they call stage fright, the pre-show jitters. Like, I've done this 100 times, literally, I can say that. So just kind of relax and be goofy and not worry about how I'm presenting myself. Or I think sometimes I have a resting bitch face. It looks like it looks like I'm not happy with what's being said. I'm just kind of neutral. I'm just listening. I got no expression. So I hope it doesn't come across like I'm angry or disinterested. But then I try not to think about that, because, as I was saying, the experience. But enough about me. I was actually using that as a jumping off point to go back to ask how many interviews you've been able to accomplish, and if you had certain, what am I trying to say? Like you were saying before, the idea of a lot of people focus on mental health from the negative side. Here's my struggles, here's the worst things that happened to me, here's how it makes my life difficult. We don't often hear a lot of stories about, here's how I fixed that problem in my life in my unique way. Here's success stories that people could emulate or draw inspiration from. So I love that idea. And if it's, of course, great name, Positive Vibes. It's like, this isn't about, look at how miserable it is. It's like, you can pull yourself out of it in this way, like I did, or at least learn from my example in some way that might be useful to you. So that threw a lot at you there. I'll let you respond. Sorry.
Well, and I was gonna say, because it just made me think. The I'm sure you've heard the term toxic positivity.
Oh,
That's what we're we're totally opposite of that. We are not advocating for that, because it's not going to help anyone.
yeah.
And so even though it's called positive vibes, we're not the positive vibes only. We don't
Gotcha.
say positive vibes only. I think it was a time where I was playing that as the hashtag, but I stopped because it's not helpful, and also it's like completely counterintuitive to what we were trying to accomplish. That if you want to be truthful and you want to transform, you cannot transform without going through a struggle or an experience where there's no transformation. Then that's how I experience it. Like, it's not necessarily like bad to good or good to bad, but it's just saying, like, whatever dynamic you're going through, whatever it is that you're going through, to transform, something had to have changed, and change is always hard. So that's what I'm getting at, that change and going through struggles, like you said, I think we talked about before, these are inevitable. So don't try and only put your mind through positivity and not confront your actual emotions or what you're actually feeling, because again, that just may make you worse off. It might not help your growth at all. I say growth like like maturity, because we're not always growing. We don't have to always be growing. I feel like there's also that concept where it's something you always have to take a lesson from something. You always have to learn from something. I'm learning now. I don't agree with that, because there's no point to the lesson at all. Like when someone has to go through something traumatic, they tell people your advice shouldn't be, at least you're a stronger person, because while that sounds nice, I think that's for them to decide, not for you to say to them. And like, when I do believe that everything happens for a reason, I'm never going to tell someone that
Mm.
under their circumstances, because whatever they're going through, I'm not going to go and tell them you're a stronger person now, so you should appreciate what you do have. I don't like that either. Like when you go and say, it's nice, again, this is stuff that you should personally think about though. Like when you say someone that you should have gratitude for what you have. Yes, I mean that's nice, but again, it's not fair to put that on someone who may be at a different place. And if your response is have gratitude or appreciate what you have because they're showing their emotions to you or they're showing what they've gone through and that's your response, kind of like saying it doesn't matter, it's not important. And I understand you have good intentions, but I think the only thing, this is what I think the most important thing you can do for someone is just be there for them, show up for them, just listen to them. Like, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have problem with that. And I think the problem is like a lot of people are fixers. A lot of people want to solve problems. A lot of people they don't want to see their friends struggling, so they're going to offer their solutions or their advice. It might not work. That actually might push them away from you because you're kind of pushing your narrative onto them and what you want them to do. If they want advice, that's different. But I think you really need to hear them out. I think the most empowering thing you can do is just listen to them and be there for them, even if it's like a moment of silence. I feel like we always want things to be a certain way. It's nice to have someone that is just there, that just sits there or is there when you need them. Because at the end of the day, it's their decision, it's their life, and I think that that's the best tools you can give them. Is I feel like sometimes when you're in those moments, you don't even know what you want. You don't even know how to communicate your feelings. Sometimes it's like just being there for them is what's important. So I know people give great advice. I know that people have amazing tips or offer words of support, but I think the most important thing is just be there for what they need. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say about that.
For sure. Yeah. And you mentioned that great thing is there balance in all things. I'm a big fan of the yin yang type of thing. And there is such a thing as too much positivity, that toxic positivity you were talking about. The example that popped into my mind was the kind of, I hadn't really thought of it before when I came across this, but there was a guy, possibly a comedian. I love comedians, stand-up philosophers, I call them, great thinkers, most of them. And he said, everyone says you got to stay positive when you got cancer. Positive, it's all going to work out, win in the fight, all that good stuff. And he's like, no, I want to be angry. Fuck cancer. That's my coping skill. And I'm like, that's right. If you need to be angry about this and that gives you strength and you're going to be negative and curmudgeonly and whatever gets you through it, maybe the other people around you are like, I get it. You're angry. Not so loud, but at least it isn't that saccharine sweet forced positive framing that this there's a very, and nothing's wrong with either approach, but it was definitely to say that this seems to be what most people conceive of as the only way to get through this. And this other guy was like, I'm gonna do it my way, and he did, and he's alive today, and that opened my eyes to that idea of there's more than one way to get there. There's different paths to the same destination for different people based on the circumstances and what works better for them.